Watch this. No way!
Yeah, so we enjoy today anyway out on the golf course. How was it? And what was the thoughts on Blackwell?
Absolutely loved it. Been on the list for years and years, and I've just had a blast out there. Fantastic green sites, just a pretty golf course. Tough. My golf showed that, I think. Tough golf course, but I can't wait to get back. North
of the Watford Gap services is, I suppose, relatively rare for you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So, golf in the Midlands in general, not really played a fat lot, or
no,
really?
No. And I know there's other stuff around here that I'd like to get to, but Blackwell's always had a sort of mystique, and coming from working at New Zealand, it was on my radar for a long time. So thank you.
No,
Joy to play.
It was great fun, wasn't it? Well, I think we actually probably had the best day, didn't we? I mean, it was a stock 24-degree temperature, not a cloud in the sky. Greens running at a solid 10.
Yeah. Could have done with them being 8, the way I put it. Yeah. No, beautiful golf course.
Well, it's great to have you on the podcast, Richard.
Thank you.
How would you introduce yourself?
I don't know, really. Golf tragic is a term that one of the other podcasts have been throwing at me, so I think that just about fits.
Golfing tragic.
Golfing tragic. I love the game, and I love playing, and you had 18 holes of it to endure, but I'm no good at it, but it brings me joy every time. And
you say that, I think there's a bit of modesty. The ball flight looks good. The swing looks great.
A foot off the ground.
There's a few of the slightly steep 3-woods, but it was good. You mentioned you're a bit partial to some short game pyrotechnics as well, which another recent previous guest of this podcast talks about. But I thought the golf looked very solid today.
Yeah, well, thank you. We all played well.
Yeah. Where did it all start in golf for you then, Richard? I suppose, take us back to the earliest memory.
So I grew up, between the ages of 7 and 18, I was in Cardiff. My father's job was there, and I was a keen soccer player, and the schools went on strike in 84, and my parents were just left with me and didn't know what to do with me, and I had a golf lesson or two, and just somewhere, I can't remember the exact shot, but somewhere I flushed one.
Yeah.
And it's just been downhill from then on, really. So I got the bug big time, and we lived by a pitch and putt, Heath Park. Probably no one's ever heard of it, but I was over there in all sorts of weather, just trampling around, finding balls, hitting them again, and just I loved the game from almost day one, I think so.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it. I seem to remember we were walking down the Forth today, and you were talking about your kids, and they're starting to get into golf a little bit, aren't they? And there really is no better diet for an 8-week summer holiday, is there, than 36 holes, half a dozen cans of Coke, chipping for Snickers bars, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's the...
Yeah, I just I get quite nostalgic about golf, but as a junior, we were just at the club. We was a member of a club. We'll come on to it, actually, because I've chosen one of the holes, but Wenvoe Castle in Cardiff.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this. I was doing the scorecard last night. I'd never heard of it.
It's just lovely, and it's so, I know every blade of grass and all of the deep foliage around it, but it's a braid course, and we'd turn up there at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave at 9 o'clock at night, and just 6 weeks felt like an eternity every summer there.
Yeah.
It was marvellous.
Long days, weren't they, as a kid? So I know pretty much, I know of most of the golf courses on here. Wenvoe Castle's the absolute exception I'd never heard of. So that's Cardiff. On paper, this looks like a hole that's in my wheelhouse. 335-yard par 4.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So, number 3, you tee up on the top of this enormous mound. It's quite stony, hilly ground there. You hit anything from a sort of 8-iron to a 3-wood down into this low valley, quite narrow fairway, and then you pitch back up the hill, and the green's at an angle sort of 45 degrees off where you want it to be. There's a front bunker, there's a false front. The green's probably, 30 feet above you, maybe even more than that above your stance, depending where you shanked it off the tee. And it caught me, and from a very young age I was just intrigued by that hole. Why was it so hard to play? And you could smash it on there with a driver, but it would be a miracle to thread it through the gap. What is it? 335
Yeah,
yards.
335.
You'd never make 3, and you'd be quite happy to make 4, but first time
most of the time people are making 6s or 7s because you just get into the wrong positions. Did that strike, I mean, you mentioned it there, maybe an appreciator of good architecture back then?
Not then, and I didn't understand that, but I knew there was something about certain holes at Wenvoe, because that was the first course that I got to know like the back of my hand. I knew there were certain holes that kept beating me up, and I didn't really understand why, but that short par 4 third, is that the appeal of that and the difficulty of it and the fact that it shouldn't be that hard, it's never gone away, that. So the fascination was born there, and then I think that made sense a few years later when I realised, okay, there's more to how they lay out these golf courses. That's a braid course, Wenvoe.
But I guess it keeps you coming back, those sort of things, don't they? Those holes where it feels gettable, or it feels like you should do so much better but you don't. That's probably the addiction that we all suffer with, almost, because it's that sense that, you know what, actually you can kind of, it just keeps you going back. I should be able to make birdie here. I should be able to do this. There's lots of different outcomes to the shots, and you know, to a certain extent, you know, that's what kind of probably hooks a lot of people, even if they don't really realise it at the time, I guess. Yeah,
and that hole, and there's a couple of other holes there that, you know, I'd have on if you'd let me have more than one on the course.
Which, by the way, we won't, and you know that.
No, I
and we've already
that.
tried hard.
There's so many ways to play that hole. You could blast it on with driver, you could hit it very short, you could try and run it up, and it doesn't matter how, you know, I've played it a million times, and I've probably got a handful of 3s up there. So the fact there's so many options, that defines good architecture to me. It's not an island green and one shot or dead. You could play it anywhere you like, and the hacker will make 4 or 5 just the same as the scratch golfer on that one.
Yeah. And fast forwarding to now, obviously you've enjoyed a long career in club management, been club secretary at some of the most storied clubs in Britain, and fairly recently had the bandwidth to throw yourself into the golf writing a bit. Just talk to us how we've come there. So just give me the sort of potted history with your career, and how, you know, was it always going to be a golf career, or was it?
No.
What could it have been?
No, I think they call it the path of least resistance. So I went to university in Bristol and studied sociology and philosophy. Everyone knows that leads to nothing in particular apart from procrastination, I think. So did 5 years in the book trade. I love books and writing and reading. So I did 5 years there, but I'd moved to London. I just wasn't playing golf at all. I missed Wenvoe, and I missed sort of the wilderness of South Wales, really. And so I took a total career nosedive and moved into greenkeeping for 5 years at Mitcham Golf Course on the Common, southwest London. I caught a train through there every morning and looked out the window at the I've got to be careful how I phrase this, the people playing golf, and I was just so jealous because I couldn't play in southwest London. The clubs are expensive, or I didn't have time, or they're packed on the weekend. So I just wrote a speculative letter, and a position came open, and I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose here. So I did that for 5 years, absolutely loved being outside, got all my qualifications for greenkeeping and so on, and more importantly, started playing golf because I was playing twice a year or something, which after a teenage addiction to the game where I was playing the whole time, it just felt like, my life was rushing away without golf in it. So I delved back into golf there. And then from there, another random piece of luck, really, but I got to become the assistant secretary at New Zealand Golf Club, which I know you know. Which I'd never heard of until I saw a job
Talk
advert.
about a baptism of fire into club management and secretarial work.
Yeah, just the most wonderful place, and full of stories and history, and just a gorgeous golf course. And
you didn't really know of that when you moved there?
No.
You didn't know a huge amount about the club?
No. And we'll come on to Woking because I've chosen its 4th hole, but it was going to... Actually, should we do that now?
Well, we've made the decision, have we? Because for context for our listeners, last night, you've spent how long poring over this Eclectic 18?
A good 15 minutes, Sam. I mean,
That's
I was
just
really thorough.
Well, then your WhatsApps to me have been indicating something completely different. But there was 2 Woking holes on there. I said, I'm so sorry if we bend the rules for one person. And I had to do the same with Richie Ramsey, and he was our first Eclectic 18. I felt bad, but he'd used multiple holes. But you'd put the 4th in at Woking, but also the 10th hole at Woking. And I said, this isn't good enough. And you've sort of sat on that decision now for 18 holes of golf, a sandwich, coffee this morning, a drive up, and we still haven't had an answer. And they were almost skirting with the idea of Blackwell 10 knocking the other Woking hole out, but there was discussions around Rise 4th hole, which is, an impossible par 4.
I thought you were going to be a bit more lenient and accommodating about this.
Can't let you have 2 from one golf course. The rules are really clear.
Okay, well, I'll use the 4th at Woking to lead into New Zealand then. So, the people who listen to your stuff, they'll know Woking and that hole and the rogue action of
John Lowe or whatever.
Yeah, Stuart Patton. So Patton was called the Mussolini of Woking, and just no one messed with him. So he went out with a spade and dug a hole in the middle of the 4th fairway. And just the first time I went to play there with someone off Golf Club Atlas, we had the most glorious game of golf, and just that bunker, I felt the modern day equivalent of what Tom Simpson must have felt there, just looking at it and going, okay, there's layers of the onion here. There's a whole depth of this architecture stuff that I wasn't aware of, and it ties back to that 3rd at Wenvoe and trying to work out why on earth I couldn't play this damn hole. So that piqued my interest in Simpson, and I went away and started, learning more about him, and shortly afterwards went to New Zealand, played it, just fell for the place hook, line and sinker, and I still feel like that about the course. It's the most wonderful club too.
It's such a charming place to hang out, isn't it?
It is, and it's not been diluted in all that time. And anyway, Simpson went there and redesigned it in the late 20s, and so I went there as assistant secretary and spent almost 8 years there, then did the same role at Royal Wimbledon, which is another fabulous golf course with more history than any man could possibly take in. Red coats on the common, and so many connections to
St George's. Huge relation, because it's the Laidlaw Purves thing, isn't it, at Royal Wimbledon?
Yeah, and the rules of golf. I mean, Purvis and Lowe back at Woking was so heavily involved in all that, and technology debates that are still roaring on around us at the moment. So that was a combined 10 years in those positions, and then I already knew Woking and played it quite regularly and just loved the golf course. So position came up there as GM 5 years ago, and I took that, and until Christmas last year I was doing that right through the COVID spell, and thoroughly enjoying it. Club's sort of experienced a renaissance. You've played there recently and done your gorgeous video about the place. It's a wonderful golf course, and they are keen to keep developing it in line with all the tradition and everything else there. So but I got to Christmas last year and just needed a break, really. And wanted to do some writing, and just wanted to take a sort of mid-career reflection point. So here I am, playing golf and not getting any better. And
just on that sort of world of club management, for want of a better term, I don't know really where club manager stops and secretary begins, if I'm honest. That's why I keep hedging my bets with the two terms. But how much has the challenges of that stuff evolved? I suppose we haven't actually done a huge amount on the podcast before with, around that. I'm just curious for your thoughts and stuff, to get a bit of a sneak peek into the world of a club office and, how that operates. I suppose a lot of people, it's kind of like club professionals have their own take, maybe on the game. What's your sort of read on, that industry, perhaps?
It's an interesting one at the moment. It's an industry that not that many people are coming into, and it's increasingly admin burdensome. Every element of the typical club is ramping up. You've got to be more aware of the safety and the HR stuff and the handicap system, and all those parts of the job. It's quite a varied role. They're all just slowly ramping up, and some of the clubs can't cope with it, with the staffing they have, and it sort of takes away, speaking personally, I got to the position where it was taking away from my ability to do the bits I love, which is being out front and welcoming people, helping them enjoy their day, developing the golf course. It's all about the golf course, most of these clubs. But
I suppose it's really hard to steer clear of then the red tape, whether it's the safeguarding. And I'm not saying safeguarding's needless red tape, but I'm sure it's over-engineered when it comes to health and safety or safeguarding or, some of the administrative stuff. And it's like, clubs that you've mentioned there, like New Zealand, Royal Wimbledon, Woking, they're such potent golf experiences. And the danger is that the more things come in, and maybe I'd put WHS in that bracket as well. It sort of all speaks to the homogenisation of golf, which, for me at least, having such different and potent flavours of golf clubs and golf courses and experience is what makes this game brilliant. And the more and more that gets diluted is, perhaps a bit of a danger.
I think it's really important these places play to their strengths too, and don't look to soften the edges that make them unique. Talking about handicaps at New Zealand, they weren't official handicaps, and the handicap review tended to happen over.
Really? Same as Swinley then. So not official.
No, well, unless it's changed since I left. I don't think it has. Certainly for the men, they would haggle over their handicaps when it snowed and they were unable to get on the golf course, and they'd do it over a bottle of claret at Wednesday lunchtime. So, and
there's so much great stuff about that, though.
Yeah, and they play foursomes golf, and I remember coming in, and he was apologetic because he'd only lost on the 17th in a match, and he felt the opponent might be able to question his handicap, despite the fact he lost. And he asked for it to be put down to even further beneath where he could play to. So it's just sort of the opposite of what happens at your everyday club, I guess. But
we've got, just on handicaps, I maybe touched on it a couple of times in the past, but I've played the game since I was 7. For the first time in nearly 30 years, I'm turning up at golf courses genuinely confused to what handicap I'm playing off. And yet WHS was there to simplify the game, really, and to make it more accessible. For me, at least, it's really complicated. I can't say I feel like the handicaps that we've arrived at are any fairer or any better measure of a player. I think it's perhaps inflated some good golfers' view of their own ability. I think some of the low handicaps have gone lower and some of the high handicaps have gone higher. But yeah, I find that's a bit of a bugger's model, if I'm honest, WHS. It's a tricky one.
Well, you saw today, I've no idea what the scores were out there. We just had fun, had a good chat and hit loads of nice shots and some bad ones. And, I had way more fun there than I would with a card in my hand or worrying about what the slope rating was or anything. It didn't interest me at all.
Just on the holes, so just a slight one. You've covered off there some of the courses that are key in your career. So New Zealand, Royal Wimbledon and Woking. We've got Woking 4. We've got New Zealand 17th. Bring that one to life for us a little bit.
Yeah, so
because I thought this was an interesting pick. I think there's many great golf holes at New Zealand. And curious as to know why 17. I'm not saying it wouldn't make it in. I think New Zealand's one of those really consistent courses where I feel like everything builds up. It's the nuance and the simplicity of the course is really its greatest asset, and it comes together brilliantly. But they're not all standout holes, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I agree. And you cross Martyrs Lane back to the 12th tee, and I think it just gets world class from then on, and it just builds. It's such an amazing. They play a lot of match play there, and it just builds to a crescendo for me. So 17 and 18 were major changes when Simpson went there. They were straight crossing par fours. When Muir Ferguson died, who was the original architect and chief exec, they'd bought a parcel of land which is left of the corner of 17, and so Simpson got to build his own 17th hole and move the 18th tee right out into the corner. And it's a very tight angle. I think it's about 80-degree dogleg left, and you have to hit. Well, Sam, you probably hit about 8 iron up to the corner, but for a mere mortal, it's a 2 iron and then a sort of 9 iron in. It's very tight. You've got to hit it far enough that you can get around the corner. If you hit it 10 yards too far, you've got the wrong angle, and green,
because the green feeds right to left, so then you're almost chasing back away. It's chasing away from you again with bunkers as well down on the left.
That's right, and you've got the sort of slightly diagonal tier. It's quite a steep tier, and everything kicks left, and the bunkers on the left are just devilish. And the firmer it gets, and it does get firm there, it's not irrigated through the fairways, and as a result you get great heathland conditions most of the time there. I just that spot by the green there is, I could spend the rest of my days there just with a couple of balls chipping around, and you never get bored. But there's another twist to this one. So I love 16, the hole before.
Fabulous par 3.
Yeah, so I used to play with a Cairn Terrier there, Lizzie, and we'd get 16 and she'd bugger off ahead, and she'd wait by the foursomes path. I used to play there with my dog a lot,
right?
Lizzie, and she would go ahead to the foursomes path on 16, and then she would, as soon as I hit my shot and started walking, she'd take off, and I wouldn't see her again until I came out onto the 17th tee, and she'd just be sat at the corner where the hole swings left on that outside corner. And as soon as she saw me, she'd just take off to the right. She'd go straight into the clubhouse, into the back of the kitchens, and start, trying to find scraps of meat and cooking fat and so on.
That's amazing.
And so Lizzie was she was there every day with me at work, and her ashes are on the corner of that hole. So every time I go there, I normally miss the shot right, because I missed the shot right, but it gives me an opportunity to go memories. There and onto the old dog.
But that's that's an amazing little story, the way you've put that there. I think that's incredible.
Yeah. So that's
and there's a slight omission then. So Royal Wimbledon didn't make the cut.
I love Royal Wimbledon. I was struggling.
So hard to squeeze courses, every course in you want to squeeze in, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And also Mitcham, I would have loved to have had that in there, because the 5 years I spent greenkeeping there were just, some of the happiest days of my life. So, but I was quite keen to get some of the places I'd seen recently in, because the last few months have been, a voyage of exploration for me.
Has it been a bit of a renaissance in your golfing career, almost in some respect? Because you finished Woking in what, November, December time? Is that
December,
right?
just for Christmas.
And then you've gone on a sort of a binge diet of golf writing through your Substack page, Stymied.
Yeah.
And great name, by the way.
Thank you.
And visiting loads of courses with the freedom and, I guess, for inspiration to write about. Just talk to me about, the writing and where you felt like why you wanted to start writing again, or what, what about, I guess.
I'd always wanted to write, but it's extraordinary the number of people who say that, and most of us just never do it. There's a sort of fear factor in there of putting yourself out there. I'd always wanted to do it. I'd never had the guts to do it. And actually, Sam, I should have mentioned this before, but the Stymied newsletter, I only started that when I started it because you were kind enough to put a piece in the cookie jar on the website.
Oh yeah,
so
of course.
I thought, I've got to have
Rank
something.
Outsiders. It's a brilliant piece.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping I can talk you into, as a bit of a favour, doing more writing for us, perhaps in due course. So,
I'd love to.
But that kind of kick-started it a little bit.
Yeah, so I'd wanted to do it, but I've called this a sabbatical. I think some people probably think it's a midlife crisis. They might be right, and we'll look back and work it out. I think you have to buy a motorbike if it's a midlife crisis. No, I'm not allowed one of those. No, I tried that. So I just had fallen out of love with the game, and it's partly to do with that admin stuff that we were talking about. I just wasn't playing. It's quite hard to play when you're in the industry. There's always something to do, or you don't want to play at home because you get seen by people, and I'd just fallen out of it. And when I did play, it was infrequent enough that I played even worse than I did this morning, and I just lost the spark. I thought, well, I'm either going to stop playing, or I'm going to play a lot and try and get that love of the game back. And when I thought back to how I was at Mitcham, I was a greenkeeper. I was visiting all sorts of courses. That's how I got to Woking, New Zealand, etc. Royal Wimbledon was another one. Going to visit these places to find out more about the turf and the architecture was such a passion, and I'd forgotten all about it. I'd neglected it. So it was an intentional effort to go and play a lot more golf and see some new courses that I hadn't seen. So some of those crop up in here.
But also your writing's very nostalgic, isn't it? There's quite a lot of stuff around some of the club nostalgia that you write about as well, it's fair to say, and some of the, maybe some of the more old school stuff within the game as well. So it's not just architecture, right? A lot of it's maybe it's some of the ineffable qualities around the clubs.
Yeah, which is the stuff that interests me, and I think you, from talking more with you and being in this gorgeous room at Blackwell.
Yeah, we should say we're sat in the members' lounge recording this pod.
It's just wonderful, and
I think some of these chairs are some of the best in the business that we're sat in.
It's extremely comfortable. This could go on for the full 75 hours that's left on the stick. I just love these places, and the more niche that's in the clubhouse and the golf course and so on, the more they should protect it, because I think it's what makes these places unique and gives them a lasting appeal. And you know, the rest of the world can homogenise, as you mentioned, but these places are properly special, and they've worked perfectly well for, you know, dozens, if not hundreds of years. And
but again, they haven't all got to be the same. You know, not every club should be like New Zealand. Not every golf club should be like Royal St George's. But there's a potency to those types of places, and I think that's the cool feature, isn't it? Particularly when you're doing so much around travelling and looking at different clubs. You know, one of the courses I saw in here that we played last year, myself and Tom, actually, is Painswick, which makes a feature. Now, curious to know, funnily enough, I think a bit of a niche thing here. When you wrote the Rank Outsiders piece, I think I was looking for a piece to put in. I think I used a picture from Painswick, actually. It may even be this green that's on there. As the little website, I'll check that, as the little tile that you put on the website. Painswick's fifth hole, for example. Painswick is nothing like New Zealand. It's nothing like Royal St George's or any of that. It's a totally different type of place, but it's also the sort of place I think you can fall in love with very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I might actually cheat and... No, I won't. I'll come back to Cleeve Hill. So Cleeve Hill was my direction into Painswick. I played Cleeve Hill, and the guy who's been on the podcast, actually, Sean, Detroit golfer.
Sean Arbour, yeah.
Who I've known for years, and he's just a star for this sort of stuff. He knows what will appeal to me. He said, you've got to get to Painswick. So I went there and just stood on the first tee wondering what on earth you meant to do from here. All you can see is a hill, which looks too steep to walk up, with a marker above. And then you get to the fifth, 114 yards par 3, totally blind. It's called Castle, and it makes sense because it's sort of, you know, might as well have crenellations around that front wall. It's well defended. And the little path that leads up there could be from a footpath in the Lake District. It's just
so unique, isn't it?
It's not golfing landscape, and it's so much fun. I could have stood on that tee all day long and hit shots, and I've played it twice now, and the second time I thought I'd probably hold in one. I got up there and couldn't even find the ball. So it's one of those brilliant punch bowl greens, isn't it? Which I always think gives you just so much excitement when you walk down, and you kind of get in that sort of sneak peek as to where the ball is. I think there's a huge amount of excitement to that. Yeah. And that sort of ties into the architectural theme. So Darwin wrote about this, and I tried to cobble together some piece around it, but he was talking about blind shots and the dells, specifically of Royal St George's, which is another one I've left out after a great deal of deliberation. And he said these blind shots and dells appeal to the childiness and make one think of robbers' caves and underground passages. And he just spoke of getting to the brow of the hill. He's just so excited to see what's there. Yeah. And architecturally, they've sort of gone way out of favour. And I get that it's probably not that fair to have many blind shots on a golf course. But at the same time, we're out there to have fun. And to me, that is loads of fun.
I think it speaks to the gulf between the professional and the amateur game, doesn't it, really? And the more we've gone down this track of thinking that the amateur game is like the professional game, means we've had to eliminate blind shots. We've had to make sure there's a fair outcome to a shot, and therefore it becomes more of an execution challenge. Whereas really, you know, the exciting stuff is the fact that it is equally unfair, and that you can get a bad bounce and you can get a good bounce, and you're going to have to hit a shot over something where you don't necessarily know the outcome before you get over the top. And it's amazing how Darwin's so good at writing about this stuff. You know, I know that, you know, our films, we're never short of plagiarising his work, but the truth is he just said it so well. Yeah, and he just got all of the charm of the sort of golf that I like to play, matches and fast golf. And there's portraits of him over the dining room at Woking, where, you know, it's one of his beloved courses. There's virtually the same portrait down in the committee room at Ryan, and his chair and everything. There's so much. He's contributed so much to golf, I think, for those of us who like that sort of, that side of the game. And his writing stands up now. It's just beautiful.
I don't think anyone else gets near him, really. Particularly love Alistair Cook's writing on golf. I wish there was more of that, but he only took up the game at 55. So he didn't quite have Darwin's tenure in it. But he's marvellous. I love Painswick. It's just everything that's traditional and rugged and natural about golf.
And there's a few of those Cotswold bangers in there as well, isn't there? I noticed Minchinhampton Old and Cleeve Hill make an appearance. So we've got the 14th at Cleeve Hill's in your scorecard, and 16th at Minchinhampton Old. I'm yet to see Minchinhampton.
Yeah, so I'll just whiz through there. I was expecting you to, pull me up on this as well. So my 14th on the card's Cleeve Hill's 13th, but I know you're going to disqualify me. But that's the one with the wild green, and it overlooks Cheltenham. And
I think it's an amazing golf hole. It's better as a par 5, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because they play it as a par 4 from the yellows.
Okay.
And it's off the whites it plays as a par 5.
Oh, right.
It is definitely a better par 5.
Yeah, I thought that was a fantastic hole. And then Cleeve Hill, the first time I went there with Sean Arbel and a couple of other people, and it was wonderful. There were people everywhere. It was Sunday morning. I pulled up in the car park, couldn't park anywhere, parked halfway down the hill, and we slowly climbed, the routing, and it's
a bit of a lung buster for 12 holes. The more and more I play it, because we joined there as a country member after our event back there in October. They put on an outrageously good country membership deal of £200 a head, and it's a brilliant place to go and hit balls, particularly over the winter, because the turf's always rock hard. But the more I play it, the more I realise it is an absolute lung buster till you get to the 14th, really.
Yeah, and then you can sort of ease off and enjoy the walk in from there, can't you? But fabulous hole. Well, enjoy the walk. You've got 2 blistering par 3s on the way in, back to back. Nice feature of a good golf course.
Which is in your Eclectic 18, back to backs. That's good enough for Cyprus, right? Yeah.
Cleeve Hill and Cyprus. That's why I went there. Minchinhampton Old, again, it's funny, I went to play there and put in the wrong sat-nav, so I was heading to the new courses at Minchinhampton, and I was just driving along. I can't remember what the village is. You rise up onto this plateau, and then I just saw the most featureless landscape with people playing golf on it, and I thought, my sat-nav's telling me I've still got 10 minutes to go. It's definitely wrong, so I just turned right and parked, and I was right. And just no bunkers, fairly minimal presentation, really good though. I mean, real linksy turf, and the greens were great, and there's just gullies and valleys and hollows everywhere. It was just the most amazing introductions of the place, and it was a glorious day. I mean, it must be incredibly bleak up there some days, but still people just absolutely love that.
I think it's just that it's a bit more connection with the natural landscape. And those 3 we've just talked about, Painswick, Cleeve Hill and Minchinhampton. Not having been to Minchinhampton Old, but there is that. It is really about the connection with the landscape, isn't it? And I think that's kind of a hugely important feature. Any others on the scorecard here that speak to maybe some of the writing stuff that you've done or places that you've visited? I mean, it's an incredible scorecard. I should add 5,922 yards in length, par 70. Brilliant little match play card. Are there any others within here that kind of speak to some of the real highlights of some of the last 6 months travelling?
Yeah, so the 8th at Hayling, 350 par 4, and again, you by this point you're getting a feel for. I quite like Tom Simpson's work. Yeah. He went there and did a whole load of work, and the 8th there is just a brilliant hole. You can't hit driver. Second shot's blind over a sort of, it's like a miniature version of the 13th at Rye. An incredibly beautiful spot to play golf. Firm, fast links land, and a wonderful hole. So another one of those, it's been on my bucket list like Blackwell for probably 20 years, and it's a feeble effort to have taken that long to get down there. And just like today, I walked off thinking I'd need to get back here soon. This is just too good.
There's something about Simpson, isn't there? I mean, a regular guest of this podcast, Sam Cooper, says that Simpson's his favourite architect. It's brilliantly put together stuff. What we've played there today at Blackwell is a Simpson and Fowler, but I think the vast majority of the credit goes to Simpson, certainly in some of the papers. There's a real knack, isn't there? And I think when you look at most of your courses are, I think pretty much all of them are kind of golden age classics or before. Without that earth moving equipment, to be able to look at a piece of land and route a course, I would talk about Blackwell in that same sentence. In fact, is Blackwell in the Eclectic 18? What's going to be the 10th hole?
Well, I was going to have the old 10th at Woking, so the original 10th.
I'll let you have this. I'm going to let you have it because you've canvassed hard for it, and I feel like I'm going to break your spirit if I don't let this stay.
Well, how about this? Instead of the 4th, because I've already mentioned the 4th, I'll have the 4th at Rye, because it's the last time I played there, my host called it almost impossible. And
there's no almost about it, is there? On
a still day, it is almost impossible, but you don't get many of those at Rye, so it's just the narrowest. It's a wonderful hole. So I'll have the 4th at Rye, if I may. Tear up the card I gave you earlier.
And you're going to have the old 10th at Woking. So tell us about the old 10th.
So 9 and 10 were always problematic at Woking. They hated the 10th that went up the hill. You've got to get from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill, as you know. They've got a few holes down in the valley. Yeah, it's a really awkward
bit of land, isn't it?
Yeah, and you've got to get back up to Blackheath, and golf's a game best played downhill, as Nicholas said. So, but you've got to get up there. So Simpson in the 30s, I haven't got the dates on me, but he built a long par 3 that goes right into the corner of the property where a mutual friend of ours may have shanked his ball and investigated the green side.
Very delicately put.
So I think that was about a 230-yard par 3, and then from there, and actually in 2018 the whole place dried out, and the aerial photos from then, they show you where the contour lines and particularly the central bunker were. So the 10th was a diagonal par 4 up the hill to a green perched near where the current 10th green is, with a central fairway bunker, and none of the woodland that's now left of 9 was impeding play. So he built this hole, and there was mixed opinion because you're playing uphill, but Charles Ambrose, there's a beautiful quote I found last night and I failed to bring with me about it, just saying it may be something like may be the best hole of all. And then in the 50s, typical club stuff, someone took a dislike to it or thought they could do better, and so they had a raffle on the Derby, and the members were asked to contribute to a fund to rebuild this hole, and the secretary at the time was affectionately called Monster. And there's some gorgeous old paperwork in the archive, all this going ahead, and the to's and fro's of letters of the committee and so on. They rebuilt it. The 9th was meant to be a par 5. It's just a brutal hole now, and then the yardage is changed for par 5, so it's now about the hardest par 4. And
yeah, it's crazy hard. Like you're getting
wild.
on that.
It's fine for you actually. The way you hit the ball, I played for their 1-2.
I'm really enjoying this podcast because you're really talking my game up here, Richard. We can run this for 75 hours actually. But yeah, it is almost. Again, good match play hole because it's half par. Really, you're going to take 5 and run, but it's not a proper par 5. No. It's like you say, and I think that speaks to the brilliance of some of these people that were working in the industry 100 years ago, and that maybe the earth moving equipment and technology hasn't actually advanced us in any way.
No.
And I played County Louth recently, Baltray, just about near Dublin, another Simpson course. And you look at the stuff that he's done, and it does scream of Tom Simpson. There's unmistakable qualities with things like Cruden Bay, and the way he's dealt with really awkward bits of land and created really good golf holes out of it. You almost don't see that so much now, because what you tend to see is someone will think about earth moving and trying to bring it back to something maybe a more traditional type of result.
So I don't know. I'd love to see that 10th, the 9th and 10th put back as Simpson wanted them. Whether it ever will or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that one, I think. But anyway, great hole. So that's my 10th. I was going to go for the 10th behind me here, but I missed the putt. So,
but that again, we talk about Simpson, but routing of golf courses, I think you said it on the first hole, massively overlooked feature of how good things are, because you can only really work with what you're given with, right, in terms of the land. And I played Blackwell today. It's such a tiny piece of land, and you get 18 holes out of it without anything ever feeling contrived, without really ever crossing over holes or having, awkward little back-to-back short holes or something to navigate a tricky corner. And you think he did all that from the ground, really, without any real tools at his disposal to do it. Found 18 green sites. I genuinely don't think, anyone 100 years on would do a better job today.
No, and the bit that stands out for Simpson, for me, and I can see it here just as at New Zealand and the work he's done at Hayling and various other places, is just the naturalness of those green sites. They're flowing. His holes are strategically brilliant, but they also look like watercolours. 17, 18, the 10th at New Zealand, all those three there. They're just, you can tell where he's worked. And also they're fairly, for these days, courageous contours within the green. I don't think he's built those. He didn't have a digger for a start, but I don't think much has happened there. He just had the artistic flair and the courage to go with some spectacular green sites, and they're just amazing to look at. The bunkering here is absolutely incredible as well, it's worth saying.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's gorgeous.
And that's, trying to bring back, I'd love to have actually seen them. We're talking a little bit on nostalgic history. I'm going to put you on the spot with a question that I actually gave to Paul Craven when we did his podcast. If I gave you a point in time you could travel back to. You've got you've got one return trip in a time travel machine, one point in time.
Wow.
I mean, is it too cliche to go back to the rainy day in Woking's fourth tee? Is it John Lowe sat there musing? I
don't think I could find anywhere more fun to be a fly on the wall than that room. And for the members then to go out on the golf course and come back storming in saying, what the hell's this? And be told that, it was Stuart who did that. And they'd suddenly go quiet.
It's gone rogue.
And the people who were playing the game down there at that point, John Lowe's an enormous figure in the game, and I don't know if Freddie Tate was there at that time. It's just some incredible, that I'm not quite sure of the timing, but certainly Arthur Balfour was Prime Minister, I think, around that time. So I can just imagine the sort of uproar. But it's spread across the land, and we know the effect it had on Simpson and the effect that Simpson's genius has had on generations of golfers ever since. So, I think it'd be there. Yeah.
And now we're sort of you've maybe sort of cured a falling out of love for the game, perhaps. Or you now is your passion now as high as it's ever been for the game? Would you say is it kind of reaching those teenage years again, or?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I played on so we talked a bit about another mutual acquaintance and short game woes, and I've had plenty of those. I won't start on that because we really will run out of time, but I played on Monday night at West Byfleet, which is another course that goes under the radar. I'd lived within a mile for 12 years or 15 years and hadn't played it until recently.
It's a crime, isn't it?
Yeah, and Abercrombie worked on that course among other architects, and it's just it's another one that goes under the radar. It's a gem. It's in wonderful condition. Anyway, I had one of those days where I could pitch, and I was, the previous one was about 25 years ago, so I just came out so delighted. I got absolutely thrashed on Monday. I think I lost 5 and 4, and I couldn't stop smiling because I hit maybe, I couldn't wait to miss the next green because I knew I'd hit another pitch shot. It's been so long. So actually talking about routings and the genius, I think that gets missed. The genius of routing is evident here. It's a fabulous routing for a tiny plot of land. West Byfleet's another. So Abercrombie turned that from 9 holes into 18. If you look on Google Map, it looks
awkward,
like a
little sort of narrow spit of land.
It's so narrow. It's got the train along one side, and it almost looks like a club tie. It's a narrow sort of strip, and it's not straight out and in. He's built in some loops there. It's the most wonderful use of the land, and I think that's just absolute genius. That, so that's been a real pleasure. So there are certain courses, Wenvoe, we've mentioned them, the ones I've worked at, where I've got to know them by playing dozens, if not hundreds of games, and they reveal themselves slowly.
Yeah, and you think West Byfleet's a real grower. I think there's a big thing in this.
Yeah.
Some courses really just hit you hard in the mouth,
Yeah.
and then you play them over and over, and not a huge amount changes.
Yeah.
And then others just gradually reveal themselves.
New Zealand, there's plenty of holes like that in New Zealand. The fourth, for example, it's such a subtle hole. There's a slight contour before the green that means you can't see the bottom of the pin, and it's just a slow burn, that one. Whereas 17, I was spellbound when I first played it. I'm just in that honeymoon period with playing West Byfleet, where I'm just getting to know all the nuance that these great architects, Abercrombie, Simpson, Colt, they were true artistic genius, I think, and the more we can preserve their stuff and look after it and protect it, we're custodians of some amazing pieces of strategic golf in some of these clubs.
And we don't always know what we're lucky to have. What does the future hold for you? The writing's brilliant. The writing's
Thank you.
got some real cult following, hasn't it? I think it's fair to say. I think you've been very modest with writing. They're brilliantly nostalgic pieces. It fills a massive gap, I think, in golf writing that doesn't really exist. It's not a science. It shouldn't all be objective. It's quite evocative stuff that you write, and they're very enjoyable pieces to read.
Thank you.
Where does the writing go? Is there a future in that? You're doing a little bits and pieces at the moment with West Byfleet. Where do you think this sort of goes long term?
Yeah, I don't know. It's still in the balance. I'm dipping my toes back into working at West Byfleet, and it's just a lovely club as well as a great golf course. So I'm really enjoying that, and it's given me a bit more structure. And but it's done me the world of good to have a break. I feel like I got my mojo back, just in general, not just for golf. Writing, I'll just carry on as long as anyone wants to read it, and when they don't want to read it, I'll just carry on for myself, because honestly, I just get so much pleasure out of it. It's that time spent staring at the blank page, wondering what on earth's going to come out next, is terrifying, but it's also so rewarding when occasionally a piece comes out and someone enjoys it. And
how do you get the inspiration for them? Because I don't know, maybe give us a flavour of some of the topics that you've written about, but how do you how do you get the words on the page? Because I agree, there's a little bit, I do some real just bog standard bit of writing occasionally for our blog, but it's you do feel a bit exposed putting your name to something and writing. It feels much more personal maybe than something else. How do you go about that? When do you write the pieces? Do you?
So I have to be pretty disciplined about my process. So I get up super early. I was a greenkeeper for 5 years. So I just get up early, walk the dog, and then I commit to 30 to 60 minutes writing. If I'm lucky and there's a day when there's something else, little else going on, I can do some more. But that's my base level. And just being disciplined about that seems to give me the freedom to actually get the stuff done, because it does take a while, and some days it's impossible. It feels impossible, but do you
have a list of things that you're going to write about, or do you just sort of take the dog and then go, right, that's it, that's the next one?
Well, I have a sort of a list that I electronically chuck stuff into. So one I was thinking, and they come to me when I'm walking the dog, or in the shower, or all over the place. Quite often when I'm playing, I had a thought yesterday about the running the gamut of emotions, and I was thinking about our lives are a roller coaster of highs and lows and peaks and troughs and so on. And when you go out there on a golf course, you saw today I hit a couple of good shots and went through every other possible emotion during 18 holes. So that was just a theme, and then they sort of fester in the back of my mind, and then I'll try and flesh them out a bit. And occasionally, the ones that work best for me are when you've got a sort of recurring theme coming through, and you can link it to a certain, I don't know, golfer or course or style of play, like foursomes or whatever. Yeah, quite a lot of them come through playing golf. There'd be one I'll pop out in the next day or two about, the worst weather I've ever played golf in. And that one's a bit longer because it just felt like there was more to say there. I mentioned Alistair Cook earlier. The first line of his book, which my late father gave to me and I didn't read I read it and then left it for a good 15 years. Just reread it recently, and the first line is something along the lines of, they've been playing golf for 800 years and no one has satisfactorily said why. And I think each of my pieces is an attempt to get at that, and I'm getting no closer, as you saw, but
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I'm mindful of time. Richard, can you talk me through your scorecard from top to bottom?
Sure.
Give me a sense. We've covered a number of holes there that charted your career, but then there's a few gaps and plenty of holes we didn't get to. So just give us a run through at your own thinking, and just talk about any highlights or any things that stand out within.
Okay, so first at Royal, North Devon.
Cradle of English golf.
Yeah, 521 yards, par 5. You walk through this gate, it's another featureless landscape, a bit like Minchinhampton, but with the sea crashing in the distance. I drove down, it's about a 3-hour drive. The hardiest golfer I know bailed out on me the day before on the weather forecast, so I thought, well, I'm going. And I was round in, I think, 148 or something like that.
That's an acceptable speed.
With a black cloud chasing me around and just, sheep grazing the land and fences around the greens, just rugged, pure, unadulterated golf and unadulterated joy for me. Got back to the clubhouse, found out there was a Taylor course, which 7-hole par 3, reminded me of Heath Park where I grew up, and so I went out there and the heavens opened, and I had a 3-hour drive home where I was literally soaked from head to toe. So, but the Taylor course, I could spend the rest of my life there. It's just amazing. So
we talked about leaving the first hole blank as well, didn't we?
Yeah, I was mulling that over. So yeah.
What was the thinking behind that?
Well, the adventure of going to visit these places or go back to them. Quite a few of these are places I've not been for years and years, or not been at all. I love that thing of just pulling into the car park and getting the sticks out and just exploring. And you never know. I try and not do. You found out today. I try and not do too much prep. So. Yeah. The first hole somewhere is just always joyous. It was really hard to not use the first at Deal as well, which I've written about a couple of times. And, during my playing, I put a ball in the members' car park. And just so many stories there. And it's the 19th for the Hewitt and so on. Not that I was ever good enough.
You're touching on something good there. Like the best first hole is very often the next one that you've never played, isn't it? Almost I always say, people are probably bored of hearing it, but the most exciting part of golf for me is getting out of the car at a car park of a golf club I've never been to. That's just the best.
It's magical, isn't it? And I don't think a non-golfer can get that. So at Royal North Devon, there's this innocuous gate, and you just pass through this gate into another century, really, or probably the century before, isn't it? Halfway through the century before. It's just a different world, and so I couldn't leave Royal North Devon out. I love it to bits. So hole 2, Tandridge, hadn't been there for 15 years. Went back there, 454 yards, par 4, dog leg right, just brilliant bunkering.
Heavily bunkered golf course from what I hear.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but beautiful. And Colt's work there is being restored. It was in great nick. The green's up tight with the boundary and the road behind. It's almost as terrifying as the 18th that we just played here. False front, the ball coming off, and the greens were quick and devilish. It's just great to be back there. Hole 3 at Wenvoe we've mentioned. Hole 4 was going to be Woking, but you've thrown that out. So that can be right. I'll have to work out what the yardage is. Painswick 5. 6 at Royal Cinque.
Very popular one. Deal 6. Best short 4 in the game.
Just unbelievable place, isn't it? And luckily, unfortunately, I'm nowhere near being able to hit it on there these days. I seem to be getting old. But if I was in front of that green like a sort of golfing Sisyphus trying to pitch a ball up and watching it roll back, I could do that forever. So great,
Paul Craven on the podcast when we did the episode of Deal, and he sort of says you can always tell the visitors, because the visitors are trying to chip it up the bank, and the members have got a putter in the hand.
Yeah, that's bitter experience. Teaches you that, I think, and I've had plenty of that on that hole. But
I
love it.
Your next 3 here are 3 courses I'm really interested to see him play.
Okay, hole 7, Hankley, just gorgeous par 3, 183 yards across a valley of heather. Tight green, bunkered at the front, pretty heavy contour in the green. Anything short comes spinning right back into the trouble, and it's just the most remote spot, Hankley. It's
really exposed, like huge wilderness, isn't it?
Enormous expanse of heath and no one there. It's just incredible.
They call it Skyfall there. Did you know that?
Yeah, and I've been there when you've caught something moving in the distance. There's military operations going on and stuff, but it's a beautifully manicured it's a proper heathland golf course. It's firm and fast, and it's just great. I love Hankley. 8 at Hayling, I mentioned. Simpson sort of semi-blind, short par 4. 9th at West
Hayling
Byfleet.
Simpson as well then?
Yeah.
Right, I didn't know that.
Not the whole thing, but he's done a lot of work there, and it's evident which bits he's influenced.
A lot of people talking a lot about Hayling at the moment.
It's great. It's really good. I've waited so long. And the thing is, we go and occasionally dip in the sea down there. So I've been going very, very near Hayling, and parking there for years and years, always peering over thinking, it looks good. It's amazing. It's and it's an hour from my house. It's wonderful.
West Byfleet 9, we've touched on a little bit, I think, with West Byfleet.
Yeah, short par 4. 10 at Woking that no longer exists, but one day I hope might. 11's a good one. So Muirfield, I remember watching Faldo win the Open. I just started getting into golf when Lyle won the Open, I think 85. Faldo won 2 years later, 18 pars. And I was like, Muirfield looks amazing. I waited all this time to get there. Was due to go there a few times and had to bail. It's quite a long way to go. Got up at 4. Drove all the way there with a mate who's a speed golfer. He insisted on running around the entire town of Gillen beforehand, every street in Gillen.
Luke Willett,
So I was on my Brompton trying to keep up with him. It was Arctic. I couldn't hold a phone to film him in my hand. And then, so after waiting 35 years to play, I played it with Hickories in 53 minutes, and he lapped me on, I think, the 10th or something.
No.
So that's
your only hit of Muirfield?
Yeah, I need to get back there. But still, if that's all I get of Muirfield,
how many groups did you have to let through in 53 minutes?
We went through the only 2 who were on the golf course.
I did ask how many groups you had to let through.
Well, it wasn't
because I'm
far
surprised. That's an acceptable pace at Muirfield. I think 53 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it was they only barely raised an eyebrow as we went sprinting through.
The boys are getting round okay. All right.
The other thing was, I think it's a little later than 11. Is it? I can't remember which it is. There's a hole where you get near the end, and there's this expanse of land. I know it's been talked about by various people between that and the sort of what's effectively a private members beach, and that bit of links land there just looks unbelievable.
Well, there's a lot of talk about saying they could build a second golf course down there, and it would be one of the best golf courses in Britain and Ireland. We've talked. I remember being in Dublin recently with a few guys, and we went to Portmarnock and to Louth. Louth's the same again. You can have a second golf course there that'd be staggering. Sometimes less is more, though. Sometimes it's nice to look out and go, isn't that brilliant Duneland over there? And wouldn't it be great to have a golf course? And sometimes the worst thing would be to have the second golf course there. Yeah. Because then what would you do? You'd sit and have a drink afterwards and go for a drinking gullen and say, well, which was the better one? I preferred this. And I was like, well, you're kind of missing the point. And then all of a sudden you've just got loads of golfers in view. And it's sometimes better to keep it in the box,
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. It was intriguing seeing it, and it's just a beautiful place. But if anyone comes out of Muirfield, even if they played it in under an hour, feeling that they didn't get their money's worth, that they need their head examining, it's just an amazing place. Hole 12,
Stoneham. Par 5.
Yeah, another place sort of been on my radar. I guess it's it's the best club in the area, I would think. It's quite a golfers club, but I'd never been there. Went there recently. Willie Park Jr. Just staggered by the place. It's some great holes, really beautiful patch of land, rolling hills, some heathland, and that hole in particular was just an incredible setting. I think we played in February, and it was just amazing to be there. After all this time, it's been on sort of, in the back of my mind for all that time, and I got there, and it's yet another one, like Blackwell, where I thought I should have done this a hell of a long time ago.
You've got the Addington in there, obviously the 13th, the iconic long par 3.
Yeah. So I've only played the Addington once, and it was a long time ago. It was when was it Moira Fabes owned it, and I turned up and there was one sort of rusty old car in the car park, and that was I found out that was the secretary. There was no one playing golf there. Put a ball down in the mat, hit a nice iron shot in the mat. It went straight through a hole in the mat and nearly hit a greenkeeper on the other side of the fairway. And I just had the place to myself, and I came off there. I'd been expecting a bit from Golf Club Atlas talking about it, and the famous Woodhouse and all the people who've played there over the years, and it didn't let me down. But it was in pretty, it needed some love. And I remember thinking that some of these holes are incredibly hard, but I just loved it. And I still haven't been back. So
it's really provocative again, though, isn't it? The land, the movement, the bridges, everything that's going on. It's
just bold, isn't it?
It's really bold
land. And,
I mean, it's the stuff, this podcast is never short of hyperbole when it comes to the Addington, but the stuff that Ryan's leading there is just amazing. And, it's going to get better as well. You've obviously mentioned Cleeve Hill, Huntercoombe 15, Royal Blackheath 18. They're the last two. So just run us through those last couple.
I love everything about Huntercoombe. It's just such a understated place. You get out of the car and the red kites sort of come down to have a look at you, and the greens. Again, I hadn't been there for 15 years. I played there twice in the space of 3 weeks, I think, a month ago or something. And they're wild greens. The contours there are the only ones I think round that compare with Woking's. I don't know. It's just the most wonderful, natural, peaceful setting in the middle of farmland, and everything about Huntercoombe is sort of subtle and understated, and I just love it. That's a great hole. Hardly any bunk. I think there are 13 bunkers or something.
Yeah, there used to be none in there or something. And it's interesting, isn't it? A place like Huntercoombe, you kind of always think a lot of clubs are, they're the product of what was built at the time, but also just the way that history's evolved around it. Sunningdale's an incredibly wealthy area. It's, proximity to London. Willie Park Jr. went off and, he broke himself in the process with Huntercoombe, from what I gather. Just wasn't close enough to the hubbub of London. And you I don't know, a bit of me sort of wonders, just how history could be different if Huntercoombe just happened to be a hell of a lot closer to London and Sunningdale was out in the sticks. Would we still talk about Sunningdale in the same way we do versus Huntercoombe, perhaps? I don't know. It's a curious one, really. But
I got the impression from the people I played with recently that that was those two projects were going along pretty much side by side, and Huntercoombe was where Park felt able to take the brakes off and just be more flamboyant, and the results are still there. And if anyone changes any of those greens, it'll be akin to the lady in the Louvre the other day throwing whatever it was, custard at the Mona Lisa. It's just it's a relic of a wonderful age, of golden age design. It must stay.
Well, you've got so you got 16 Minchinhampton Old, 17th New Zealand, and we're finishing at Royal Blackheath 18.
Yeah, I was surprised this one came in because I went there recently, and
great yardage, 287 yard par 4. I'm all about this.
Well, I didn't know what to expect of the golf course. I hadn't heard that much positive stuff about Royal Blackheath, but I knew about the history, and that we got shown around the museum, which was just incredible. There's so much there, and it's
would you recommend that as a visit?
Yeah, it's a must do. It's fabulous, and the golf course is really good. Exceeded expectation. 18 is a strange hole. You've got to get from the 17th green to the clubhouse, and there's sort of a hedge that's in play, and it's quite a difficult shot up the hill, and the green is pretty close to the clubhouse. I'm just looking behind me to make sure no one's hitting balls at me from an equally close place. But they sit out the front at Blackheath, and if you had a ball in the air and you misjudged it by 10 or 15 yards, it could get pretty awkward, I would think. But and then the other thing about that was you hear stories about them sitting in the dining room there for decades and chipping balls out the window after lunch back onto that green. And I don't know. I thought that was a nice finishing hole, but I tend to finish any round of golf in a pretty upbeat state, really.
Yeah.
There's not many 18ths where I think that was a lousy finish. I'm just grateful that we get to play this game, and
That's a brilliant way to close out. I back of my mind is a question as well. Any courses that you didn't squeeze in that you would like to have? And I'll be honest. I mean, you've got a little Pine Valley bag tag on the single strap, and great that these courses are all on brand. Like they're all very much similar. There's a great flow and harmony to those types of courses. Were there any other courses that you just desperately wanted to squeeze a hole in? Maybe Royal Wimbledon, perhaps, but that definitely. You just couldn't, because it's a real brain teaser, isn't it? This to try and get the holes you want in from the certain places, but then trying to make sure the courses feature. They're two different problems.
So many. So I intentionally left out. I've played a bit of golf in the States, been really lucky and played some amazing places over there. But I wanted it to be UK because that's my current sort of
I think that's great.
mission. Royal Wimbledon I would love to have included. Royal St George's. There's no old course on there. I mean, that's a glaring error really. But Swinley I love. The Berkshire.
They're all English with the exception of one.
Which is the
one in
Muirfield.
Wales, one in Scotland, rest are in England.
Yeah. Blackwell, having played it this morning, I mean, this is a special place. I could do this.
You could do it again next week and it would look different.
Yeah, I'd probably have 3 holes in common. It's just a fluid thing. But the important bit and the bit that I love about what you've done with both the podcast and the other material, but particularly the Eclectic 18, it just gets us thinking about what sparks us up about golf. And I will continue to think about this and it'll evolve, but I'm grateful that you've done this so we can all sit around arguing about our holes and so on.
Brilliant. Well, Richard, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for today, and thanks for coming up and seeing Blackwell. It's great. It's always great fun hosting. It's great visiting and being on the road and seeing courses, but there's nothing more rewarding than getting to show people your home club, I think. So,
wonderful.
And I'm glad you've had a good time. But thanks again.
Thank you. Cheers, sir.
Watch this.